Ladies and gentlemen of the Dusk community, welcome. Today is a momentous day. Our beloved Dusk, a game of retro shooter euphoria, has finally come to console by way of Nintendo Switch. Oh yes, it has been a long road. Many delays, much anticipation. But now we get to celebrate this indie darling going into the hands of a new crop of gamers. However, my dear friends, I do have some bad news. This video is not for you. Oh, by all means, please stay, enjoy yourselves. Go grab a drink, kick your feet up. You're always welcome here. No, this video is actually for you. Yes, you, random Nintendo Switch owner. Let me guess, you were browsing through the eShop, saw this weird thumbnail with a strange demonic antler creature on it, and thought, what's this? Perhaps you vaguely recognize it because one of your friends who's always wearing a Doom t-shirt and quoting Duke Nukem just won't shut up about it. Maybe you're aware of what Dusk is and think, can it be that good? I mean, I do have Doom Eternal on here. Why should I play this? And why are the graphics so blocky? In truth, it doesn't really matter how you got here. Either way, you popped onto YouTube, searched for a DUSK Switch review, and, well, here we are. And I'm happy to tell you that the game that you just stumbled upon is lightning in a bottle. Green lightning in a bottle. This is a game that shot people back to their childhoods. A game that reminded many that the old ways are still the best ways. A game that sparked a renaissance. A game I consider one of my all-time favorite first-person shooters that can now be played anywhere. Oh yes, random Nintendo Switch person, it's your lucky day. Oh, but where are my manners? Hi there, I'm Kirk, and today I'm finally taking a look at Dusk on the Nintendo Switch to see if it's worthy. But before all that, if you're new here and you're digging what you're seeing, please consider liking and subscribing to help support this channel. Alrighty, let the montage begin. Dusk was originally released into early access on PC in 2017, and saw its full release on December 10th of 2018, which happened to be the 25th anniversary of Doom's release. It was developed by David Szymanski and published by New Blood Interactive. Dusk is a love letter to the first-person shooters of the 90s and early to mid-2000s. Doom, Quake, Heretic, Hexen, Nukem, Blood, Half-Life, these are some of the legendary shooters Dusk draws heavy inspiration from. Games where fun, balls-to-the-wall action was priority, and well-oiled mechanics and inventive, challenging level design was king. It distilled the best aspects of each game and discarded the worst. The result was an experience that not only managed to recreate old-school shooter mechanics perfectly, but also improve upon them with unapologetic, pixelated, polygonal flair. Retro FPS fans were immediately smitten with it. It was as if they had unearthed a rare FPS treasure thought to be lost to the sands of gaming history. See, what you have to understand is that for years, I'd say the mid-2000s to mid-2010s, the FPS genre was dominated by gritty, brown military shooters and narrative-heavy cinematic experiences that strove for an immersive experience rather than a skill-focused challenge. This wasn't all bad, there were some fantastic titles released in this period, but there was a growing sense, at least with me, that the old-school style of shooter was long gone, a relic of the past that would only re-emerge for the occasional niche title. But then attitudes began to change. Newer titles like the Shadow Warrior reboot, Wolfenstein: The New Order, and of course, Doom 2016 would embrace old school design and iterate on it, to the joy of many gamers. And when Dusk came, it rolled with that momentum. Actually it embraced that momentum, took control of it, and steered it, sword raised high and screaming. It was a success. Gamers couldn't get enough of it. And before you knew it, the floodgates of hell slammed open. Other indie developers began to release their own takes on the retro shooter. Many were spiritual successors to the likes of Doom and Quake, while others presented more unique concepts. And some dusted off old engines to create new experiences. Before you knew it, the retro FPS was a bona fide subgenre, with companies sprouting up or reinventing themselves to solely focus on them. Sure, you could say it's a fad, another hunk of nostalgia for the gaming market to mine until exhausted, but the fact of the matter was, suddenly, many gamers of the 90s, myself included, had a style of game return to them they assumed was long gone. And Dusk was a game that helped spark this, and in my opinion, still remains the gold standard. Dusk is made up of 3 separate, very distinct episodes. The first episode, The Foothills, is a rollicking rampage through abandoned farms, churches, and the spooky town of Dusk itself. A setting that brings deep cuts like Redneck Rampage to mind, but also harkens to cinema classics like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's a blast to play through, and very much in line with what you'd expect from a retro shooter that wears its influences on its sleeve. Episode 2, though, The Facilities, is when you start to see Dusk transcend its influences and take on its own identity. In this chapter, you get to play with some of the funnest power-ups, like the syringe, which pretty much turns the game into super hot. Time only moves when you do, and there's something oddly satisfying about seeing these polygonal enemies float through the air. There's a greater emphasis on booby traps and platforming, and the chapter makes some heavy swings between wide-open battlefields and claustrophobic spaces, always mixing up the challenge for the player and trying to scare the shit out of them. Episode 3, however, in my mind, is the one that cements Dusk as an indie masterpiece. This chapter features some of the most creative and spectacular levels of the game, with a focus on altering the levels themselves in order to progress. Themes of Lovecraft are on heavy display here, and the final levels of this episode bring some of the best surprises of the whole game. The thing is, though, Dusk may have the clever references, the wild, bizarre, and tightly designed levels, and a soundtrack that makes the head bang, shout out to Andrew Holsholt, but what makes Dusk work is the same thing that makes any good shooter work. Its movement and shooting mechanics, which I feel are damn near perfect. All I want out of this style of game is to feel as light as a feather, fast as a rocket, and hard-hitting like a sledgehammer, and Dusk accomplishes all 3 of these with flying dark crimson colors. Where the best moments have you slipping around a hail of projectiles, picking off enemies one by one, dodging the ones sneaking up on you, and lobbing explosives at the pesky vertical villains. Or making that last second kill while doing flips in the air with nary a sweat on your brow or finger cramp. It's a dance of smooth carnage, bolstered by tight, responsive controls, and the foes you face are a wide variety of FPS villainy. Projectile throwers, floaters, chargers, and pests that will always keep pressure and are unforgiving of lackadaisical play. The weapons of Dusk are a blast, definitely sticking to the classic archetypes but cranked up to 11 on the awesomeness meter. Pistols and shotguns akimbo is the status quo. The machine gun feels like it was ripped out of a World War II shooter, the kind of thing that could paint a beach red. And the Heretic crossbow is basically here, able to shoot through multiple enemies at a time. The hunting rifle, one of my favorites, is a scopeless sniper type that will inject dopamine straight into the brain whenever you pull off a tricky shot. The rivet gun is essentially a rocket launcher on a cocktail of steroids and speed that the grenade launcher was also sipping on. And the double barrel kinda tickles me in my fun parts every time I shoot it. And of course, the most epically epic weapon of epicness in this whole game, the soap. Oh yes, the soap. One is hidden in every level, and if you find it, it will kill anything in one hit. And these demons must be cleansed. Dusk is full of fun little secrets and tricks like this. The crossbow, for example, has a kickback that can actually keep players suspended in the air if they fire fast enough. If you have the reflexes for it, or the luck, you can actually deflect incoming shots with your sickles. And there are glowing green crystals throughout that, if broken, will drive the enemies mad and make them attack each other. Dusk is a game that effortlessly enables the player to feel like a total badass while also leaving plenty of room for utter silliness, and it does it in the best way a video game can do it, with tight mechanics and making sure the player is having nothing but fun from start to finish. I love this game. So how did Dusk fare making its long transition to the Switch? Well, I'm happy to say pretty damn good. In terms of visuals, Dusk has made the transition to Nintendo's hybrid intact. Models and textures look identical to the PC version. And considering this version's numerous delays stemmed from issues trying to get it to run properly on the Switch, it's a joy seeing Dusk looking as it should, running at 1080p docked, 720p handheld, and locked at 60 frames per second, with the rare minor frame dip here and there. It's an impressive, damn near flawless transition, and it makes a great first impression for those who may be unfamiliar with New Blood's catalog of games. It's also worth mentioning that the player has a decent amount of settings they can play with, most of which were brought over from the PC version. The FOB is fully adjustable, a feature that isn't always included in console shooters, so it's nice to see here. A variety of different color palettes can be chosen, giving the game a different atmosphere if so desired, and there are options to make the game more retro looking, with a pixelation slider and the option for a crispier color palette. I honestly have no complaints here. This is the best case scenario for this game making the console jump. And hey, if this outcome was only possible by the delays, then good. I'm glad New Blood made sure they got it right. In terms of controls, Dusk handles beautifully on a gamepad, and there are some cool things to point out. The big addition here is the weapon wheel, which is very similar to the ones implemented in the newer Doom games. It works as it should, the only downsides being accidentally choosing the wrong weapon when in a heated situation, which is easy to do. It makes me wonder if it would have been wise to actually slow the game down during weapon switching, just like in Doom, to avoid these situations. Jumping is not only mapped to the B button, but also the L shoulder button, making it more comfortable to pull off bunny hops while in combat, something also seen in the recent console versions of Quake. Another thing I really appreciated is that holding down on the D-pad quick saves the game, and holding up quick loads. And as is the trend with shooters on the Switch, you do have the option for full gyro aim with adjustable sensitivity, and it does feel mighty fine to use when playing in handheld. Is it worthy? Oh yeah, it's worthy. New Blood has made a phenomenal console debut with an incredible port of their signature game. All I have to say is, if you're a first-person shooter fan, especially a retro shooter fan, and you have a Switch, buy this game immediately. I cannot recommend it enough. From here, I'm hoping this will pave the way for more New Blood games to make the jump. Amid Evil, for instance, is another FPS which is just as good, and to some, maybe even a little better than Dusk. And I have to imagine Ultra Kill is in discussion for a console port. Oh yeah, you definitely want that one. Let's get these games an even bigger audience. But my dear friends, old and new, that's all for me today. What do you think of Dusk? What do you think of the Switch version? Be sure to let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications on future uploads. It's a few clicks for you, but a massive help for this channel. And be sure to come say hi in the Kirk Collects Discord linked below. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.